Welcome, everyone. Good afternoon, good morning from wherever you're joining us. And thank you for joining us for today's October Lunch and Learn session. We are hosting it at the beginning of November, but it is our October Lunch and Learn. We wanted to do that just to accommodate the holidays for everyone and make sure that you can still attend regardless of whether you're in school or out of the classroom due to the holidays. So today we will be talking about class management in Dyknow. And this was a topic that we wanted to touch on. It's not something that we talk about too frequently, and it's a little bit more technical of a topic. So we wanted to use this time to just recap class management with Dyknow, as well as share some new feature releases that were released recently regarding class management. So it's going to be a great session full of information. And for those of you who haven't joined a Lunch and Learn before, or if you have and you are a returning attendee, these Lunch and Learns are recorded and we share them with you after the fact. So they'll be provided to you whether you were able to attend the live session or if you were not able to attend and just registered, we'll send that to you via email this afternoon. So you can see that and watch that on your own time. All of our previous Lunch and Learns are also available on our YouTube channel. You can find us at Dyknow on YouTube and watch all of our previous sessions. I believe there's about 7 or 8 now. We've really been cranking these out and they're full of really helpful topics thanks to Casey. So I think that's all I have to say. One last thing before we kind of jump into the content is please submit any questions that you have throughout the session regarding Dyknow, regarding class management, any questions that you have through the Q&A tool. We disable chat during these sessions, but we do have the Q&A available, and we highly encourage you to submit any questions during the session that you have. We'll leave some time at the end to facilitate those questions and get them answered for you. So let's jump into it. I know the majority of people who attend these sessions are current Dyknow users, but for anyone who's not currently a Dyknow user and maybe you're not as familiar with Dyknow, Dyknow is a monitoring solution for schools with school-issued devices. So we have our classroom management module, which we'll really be focusing on today, and that enables teachers to gain real-time visibility of student screens, use our blocking tools to block activity, create blocking plans, and do on-the-spot blocking, as well as engage students with messages, questions, things of that nature. And then we really enable teachers to get a full view of what students have been doing during class as an aggregate, as a one-on-one student, and kind of have that class history and analytics for student activity on devices. Our device impact measurement module is just a broader kind of version of our class analytics and gives administrators and tech coaches a just full view of what's happening from a device activity perspective across your school or district, as well as those websites and applications that you maybe have paid for, help you identify where can you cut costs, maybe what can you put more time on professional development into, and things of that nature. So that's just an overview for anyone who is interested in learning more about Dyknow. If you're not a current user and are interested in seeing a full demo of the product, we would be happy to set that up for you. Just reach out to us and we'll follow up with you following this event as well. Let's jump into it. So today I'm Tierra Leustig. I'm our marketing director here at Dyknow, and I will be passing the baton to Casey Higgs, who is our school success director, and she will be leading today's session. So Casey, I'll pass it off to you, and I'll be monitoring the Q&A while you go through your presentation.
Well, thank you, Tierra, as always, and thanks to all that have joined us today. I want to start off today by clarifying that we are talking about class management, not necessarily classroom management, but class management, which is really important for teachers, especially now that technology is so prevalent in the classroom. It's inevitable, really. You have to manage your class rosters at some point. Hopefully not too often though, right? Because truthfully, managing your classes can also be a distraction. So I want to explain the way that Dyknow has approached classes and class management so that you all have context as we move forward in the presentation. So Dyknow's approach to classes and how classes get managed by end users in Dyknow is really twofold. First, we recognize the presence and the impact of student information systems. We know, all schools use them. We know that they have critical data that we need to function as a software in our current state. So, we didn't really reinvent the wheel here. We're just playing the game, and it works really well for the most part, but it does require administrator involvement. The main benefit of student information systems and their data for Dyknow is that it already exists, right? And even though the admins are the ones to facilitate, teachers really reap a big benefit because they shouldn't really have to manage classes at all. And that brings me to the second part of our approach to classes and class management. And that's the way that we recognize that student information systems and their data, they're just not perfect. They're never going to be. And we can't just leave teachers hanging when things don't work out as planned. So, we at Dyknow have implemented features over the years that empower teachers to edit their classes when they do need to. And of course, we give both tech coaches and administrators the ability to manually manage classes. So, no one has to be 100% dependent on that SIS data. So given that context, let's talk classes. You've probably noticed by now that Dyknow monitoring works by class. Whether your class is physically together, in session or remote or a hybrid version, that part doesn't matter. Overall, teachers in Dyknow monitor the classes to which they're assigned, and then the students that are assigned to those rosters get monitored in those classes. So it makes sense that, the My Classes page that we're looking at here is the first that teachers are going to see after they log into Dyknow. It is unique for every teacher because of those class assignments, of course, but it's also the same for every teacher because it allows you to, review your class assignments, both the current ones and the previous ones. It allows you to start monitoring an assigned class, or maybe join a class that's already been started by a co-teacher. It allows you to edit your classes, and of course, also access additional features within Dyknow, like your blocking plans and class history. And I just realized I set up animations for this. So you can review your classes, you can edit them or start monitoring them, of course. You can edit them as well and access additional features here from the class history page. Now, most of those classes that you're going to see on your My Classes page, those are most of those, get created for you automatically. That happens during, the account setup process, and then usually over the summer, before each new school year when your data gets rolled over. And it all happens via import really into Dyknow. We're either synced with your student information system via API integration, or your administrators are uploading data files in some format or another into Dyknow. When a class gets imported into Dyknow, it already has your teacher assignments associated, which again is why teachers shouldn't have to do any work. Hopefully they don't have to, for Dyknow to just be working from day one. And you can see here in this screenshot is just one example of the data that we're looking for when we import classes, when your administrators are importing classes, especially if you're one school among a district. That school code is going to be helpful because that's what actually associates a class with your school. And then these other details that we're looking for help Dyknow identify each class as unique when it gets imported. Teacher user ID, of course, is that final field there. That is the enrollment portion that ties each teacher or multiple teachers, right, to a given class. And then that's how it shows up on that particular teacher's My Classes page. So that's the majority of the way classes are set up, right? But classes can also be created manually in Dyknow, which is ideal, as I think I already mentioned, because there's always going to be maybe an error here or there with the data imports from your student information system. And there's always going to be classes that just maybe don't exist in your student information system. So manually creating them here is the best option, right? Like examples of these kind of classes are study halls, in school suspension classes, after school programs. Again, things that don't necessarily exist in your student information system as a class, but things that or times during which you still want to monitor student activity. So if you have a tech coach or admin role, you can manually create and edit classes in Dyknow via the admin settings and then the classes tab. Specifically, tech coaches can create or edit classes for any of the schools that they're assigned to, and administrators can do so for all schools within their district or within their Dyknow account. And even now, drum roll please, now tech coaches and administrators aren't the only ones that can create classes manually in Dyknow, even teachers can. So this is really exciting. The ability for teachers to create their own classes is a feature that we literally just released a couple days ago. It's probably been one of our most requested features to date. And I imagine that's because, again, the way that student information system data is hairy, right? So if class assignments are missing or the class rosters are incorrect, that, whatever's being imported by your administrators, if something's wrong, missing, whatever, teachers now are empowered in Dyknow really to self-help. And that saves everyone time. And we all know how valuable time is. So again, now teachers can create their own classes in Dyknow. And these classes are independent of that importing student information system data. The how-to instructions are super easy as well. I've got a little video here to walk you through. On the My Classes page now, teachers will see a Create New Class button in the upper right-hand corner where that Combined Classes button is. You click that, and then you're taken here to the Create New Class page. There are some required fields here that we ask you to fill out: class name, of course, school, the start date, the end date. But then you, of course, can fill out those other optional fields as well. And then once you're finished, you'll click Save and be taken here to the Edit Class page where you can click Save again and just be done with it. But more likely, you're going to actually finish, filling out the details of your class, whether you're assigning a default blocking plan, adding other teachers to your class, or, most importantly, probably building your roster here. This is where you would do that again for your newly created class. And then once you click Save here, once you filled out the details that you need, this class will appear on your My Classes page, just like your other classes already do. Okay. You can see here, I'm just adding students to my roster in the video, and then I'll click Save. So really now all faculty members that are using Dyknow can create classes. And here's just a quick reminder of those specific class creation permissions. So administrators can manually create a class for any school within their district or, just within your account. Tech coaches can do so for any school or schools, plural, to which they're assigned. And then teachers can manually create their own self-assigned classes. And since we're discussing, teacher created classes and permissions, it really is important for me to note that teacher created classes, this new feature, is something that an administrator in Dyknow can disable. So teachers, if you don't see that Create New Class button, remember that a Dyknow user with the administrator role does have the ability to disable and enable teacher created classes in Dyknow. And admins, here's quickly how you would do that. In the admin settings, you'll find that blackout settings tab where there are other settings that restrict monitoring as well. And then there's a new now, teacher created classes sub tab that you'll select. And then you'll use that toggle to switch between enabled or disabled, depending on what you want. Automatically by default, it is enabled now for all. So again, if you want to disable it, admins, you'll have to go and do that manually. Okay, so now we've talked about creating classes in Dyknow and assignments and how that all works. Let's move on to editing classes. And we'll start with editing classes, as the teacher assigned to those classes. And you can see here on my screen, I've got a list of the things that each teacher can edit for an assigned class. And these specifically are the SIS created classes that got imported during that onboarding process with your admins or, just during the rollover period over summer. And again, you'll edit your classes via the My Classes page. Each class below the name, below that Start Monitoring button, really, you'll find the Edit hyperlink, which is what you'll click on to begin editing that class. So now I'm going to walk through each of these 4 things that you can edit of a SIS assigned class and talk about each one specifically. Oh, my animations. There's that edit hyperlink. That's what you'll want to click when you need to edit your class. Okay, first up, we've got editing class name. This one's pretty straightforward. Not much I need to say here. The fact is, though, that some of the names that get imported for classes from your student information systems are crazy long. Like, they might be helpful for, the data your admins are working with in the SIS, or, whatever the reason. It's just not helpful for you as a teacher, right? They've got numbers in them and a bunch of characters that don't help you. So I definitely recommend teachers, edit your class names when you need to make it easier on yourself, especially if you've got a ton of classes. Like, make it easier on yourself to find them. Use capital letters, use other characters, arrows, whatever it takes for you to be able to, just visually go to that class, because currently we don't have the ability to sort these in any sort of custom order. And you can see here just in my screenshot, again, a couple examples. I have a do not use class, so I know I'm not going to use that one. My homeroom, that's an easy one. I need that every day. I've added little stars there. I've got a daily monitoring class as well, so I know those are probably my go-tos. Next, we have the ability to edit default blocking plan. This is a brand new feature we released last month. And when you add a default blocking plan to a class, it will get automatically enforced anytime you begin a monitoring session for that class. And adding a default blocking plan, or editing your selection, is super straightforward. You just use this field here that I've highlighted, and it will show you, of course, the list of blocking plans that have already been created, whether they're yours or school-wide blocking plans. And so you would select one of those, but you could also select, this is not a great screenshot because I don't show it. At the very bottom, you would see segmented blocking plan. That's an option as well. So you would select that to begin creating a segmented blocking plan to assign as default. And a couple things here I want to note. So, think about co-taught classes. You might ask yourself, well, if I have a bunch of teachers assigned to my given class, what happens to the default blocking plan? Can they edit it? Can they change it? Well, the answer is yes, they can remove it, or excuse me, they can edit it, and they can replace it, but they can't remove it in terms of like from your list of plans. And they can't share that plan with any other class. This is the way it's designed because blocking plans are associated with users. So again, they can change the default blocking plan, but they can't, take it from your list of blocking plans or use it as their own. Another thing I want to note too is about segmented blocking plans. So we've been talking about data a lot, and you might wonder, okay, let's say I've assigned a segmented blocking plan to a given class as default. Well, what if the student roster changes because of the data getting imported? Well, first and foremost, any students that get added to a class via data import, when there's a segmented blocking plan assigned as default, they're automatically just going to get thrown into group one of that segmented blocking plan. You, of course, can edit them once you figure that out, or once you see them show up in group one. Similarly, what if the teacher assignments change because of the data import? Well, that would actually, like if the owner of the blocking plan that was assigned as default got removed, that blocking plan would be removed as well. But if other teacher assignments changed, it wouldn't be affected. So since we launched this feature, actually, I think, I forget the number specifically, but thousands of default blocking plans have been assigned to Dyknow classes by teachers around the world, which means like if you think about a default blocking plan saving maybe an average of 3-ish clicks per class, maybe a minimum, that's like hundreds of thousands of clicks that we've saved teachers in maybe a month or so. And that reminds me, we did a lunch and learn on default blocking plans last month. So if you missed it, definitely go to our website, go to the YouTube channel to check it out. There's a ton of how-tos and best practices in that. And I really do think that you'll find it valuable. So go check it out. Okay, back to editing classes. Let's talk about editing teacher assignments. There is an unlimited number of teachers that you can assign, a number of teachers that you can assign to one of your classes. And all of the teachers assigned to a given class can monitor that class simultaneously. So that's allowing teaching assistants, gifted and talented teachers, teachers on special assignment, principals, tech coaches, whomever, to help you keep students on task. So if and when you're editing teacher assignments for one of your classes, this video will show you how. You're going to, of course, click that edit hyperlink first. Then you'll click the add teacher button and a search field will appear where you will search for and select the name of the teacher you want to add. You have to actually select it when it appears, when Dyknow, suggests that name for you. But you'll know you did it right because the teacher's name will appear then in that manage teacher section. If you need to remove a teacher, you would click the red X next to his or her name and then click save. If maybe for some reason you don't see a manage teacher section that you can edit, this just means that you're not a SIS assigned teacher. So you were added manually after the data import. And that means then that you don't have the ability to add other teachers. What I'm getting at really is, not all teachers that are assigned to a co-taught class have the same permissions necessarily. And I can specify here. So all teachers that are assigned to a class, no matter how they're assigned, can edit the class's roster, those students. They can combine classes. They can monitor that class, of course, and enforce a blocking plan. And they can also make temporary changes to the blocking plan during a monitoring session. However, only those teachers that were SIS assigned, so those that got assigned via the import, only those teachers can edit the class name and add other teachers to a class. So if you got added to a class manually, you won't be able to add other teachers and you won't be able to remove other teachers from a class. Okay. Next up, we're going to talk about edits to class roster. So, next slide. Get my video to work. There we go. Okay, so editing class roster. This is similar to the way you add teachers, right? Or remove them. If you need to remove a student, you'll click the red X icon to remove them from your roster, or you would just add one by clicking the add student button, then using that search field to search for and select the name of the student you want to add. Again, the name of the student will appear in that manage students section when you've properly selected him or her, when they've actually been added to your roster. Excuse me. If, for some reason you're not finding a student's name that you're looking for, it's likely that he or she is either not assigned to your same school in Dyknow, so you then just don't have permission to add him or her to your roster, or they're not listed as a user at Dyknow at all. And in that case, you would need to contact your Dyknow administrator to make sure that student user got created, got imported in Dyknow. So the how-to of editing class rosters is pretty straightforward, but let's talk now a little bit more about them, specifically like the rules of editing classes, how manual class edits that you make as a teacher might be affected by the data that's getting imported from your student information system into Dyknow. So you might notice that, let's say yesterday, you edited your class roster, to add student Tierra. Well, today then, when you logged into Dyknow, you had to do so again. Tierra wasn't there anymore. This is because of the way Dyknow manages data and data imports. If your school is importing that SIS data into Dyknow daily, we have a daily import setting. Any class roster edits that get made by a teacher are going to be overwritten overnight. So any permanent edits that need to be made to a class roster need to happen through your Dyknow administrator or your student information system manager, because they have to make sure that that data is, that edit happened within the data that's getting imported into Dyknow. And why is this? Remember, this is kind of what I was saying when we first started. This is really about the way that Dyknow prioritizes that student information system data. So this is the way Dyknow Import Manager is designed. More specifically, we use the SIS ID field. So the classes that get imported by an administrator have a SIS ID field. That's a required field because that's what Dyknow is using to match what they're importing with the data that already exists in Dyknow. So that class roster you edited yesterday and added Tierra to, that class has a sys-ID. And so when Dyna imported data again overnight, that roster got reset to match what was importing. Now, on the flip side of this, there's no sys-ID field required for manually created classes. So any you manually create are going to get ignored by Dyknow data imports. So again, when a teacher creates a new class in Dyknow, it's going to remain as he or she created it and even edit it later on. But when a teacher edits an assigned class that was created by data imports by the sys, edits to the class name, co-teachers, default blocking plan don't get overwritten, but edits to the class roster will. Similarly, if a tech coach or an admin edits a class in the admin settings in that classes tab, any changes they make to the class name and roster are going to get overwritten, but edits to the teachers assigned to that class will not. So just remember, long story short, rule of thumb, if you have permanent class roster edits you need to make, you can do so, temporarily, so you're at least able to monitor that student when you need. But in order to avoid having to do that every single day, just contact your Dyknow account administrator or contact us at Dyknow support, and we can tell you who that is, who you need to reach out to, so that you can make sure that edit is made permanently, and therefore, it's getting imported into Dyknow that way. Okay, what else can we talk about with editing classes? We've got combining classes. Oops. There we go, combining classes. Yes, Dyknow teachers can combine them. The combine classes button is what you'll use to begin combining one or more of your assigned classes into a single class, which is really helpful, of course, if you have several classes with the same rosters, right? Kids don't leave the room, even though you might be teaching different subjects, or maybe you just have different sections of the same class in Dyknow, and you want to combine them just to make it easier on yourself. So you'll click that Combine Classes button in the upper right-hand corner. Then from this Combine Classes screen, you're basically doing two things. Giving the class that you're about to combine, it'll be a newly created class, so you're just giving it a name. And then you are choosing the classes that you want to combine. Now, the selected classes that you want to combine, they have to have the same assigned teacher or teachers, plural. If not, Dyknow is going to notify you to edit those classes so that they do all have the same teachers before you can combine them. Once you're done, you click save. You saw that in the video. And a pop-up notification will appear as well, asking you to approve before you combine. The reason this happens is because currently in Dyknow, when you're combining classes, that newly combined class actually replaces the incumbent classes on your My Classes page. So you just click remove and combine, and then you're done. And you'll know that the class is combined because you'll see on your My Classes page, it's got a gold star that identifies it, among the rest of your classes. I do want to note a couple other things about combined classes. Again, going back to those data imports. So if there are class roster edits made in the importing data, your combined class should remain updated because the imports are making the changes to the incumbent classes, right? The incumbent classes have the sys-ID field. And those incumbent classes make up the combined class. So ideally, the incumbent classes will get updated, and therefore your combined class will too, even though it's not getting updated directly, if that makes sense. Also, the class history data that's associated, the class history data will remain associated with the incumbent class names. And then finally, combining classes isn't currently something that you all as end users can do in Dyknow. It is a quote unquote permanent change. But if you do ever want to uncombine classes, you would just need to reach out to Dyknow support, and we are happy to uncombine them for you. But wait, there's even more good news. You won't have to worry about this for much longer. Of course, if you need uncombined classes, let us know right now, but very soon, and I mean soon as in hopefully a couple days, maybe a couple weeks at the latest, we will also release a new feature that is the ability to uncombine any combined classes, which is yet another feature that's been highly requested by teachers. And once it's here, you'll have that much more control over your assigned classes in Dyknow. If you can't tell, we're really trying to empower teachers with features like this. The ability to uncombine classes, just like we've done with the ability to create classes for teachers. So again, if the class assignments or the rosters that are getting imported by your administrators from your student information system are incorrect, you can now create a new class, and you're equally will soon be empowered to combine and uncombine any classes, again, to save everyone time, you, the teacher, your admins that might be helping you too, us as Dyknow support, et cetera, et cetera. So look out for that. As always with new features, we're going to notify you when they're available via a little notification message that appears within the product. So it'll pop up at the top of your screen, share the new feature, and of course, some information to learn more. And speaking of learning more, there is an entire section of the Dyknow Help Center dedicated to everything we just talked about: classes and class management resources for teachers. I encourage you all to check it out. We really do make an effort to maintain our help center and articles within it. So I think whatever you'll find in there will be quite helpful. Of course, if you find otherwise, or if you have any, other general feedback to share about our help center, please do reach out and let us know. Quick reminder here, of course, on my slide about how you can reach us. And I will leave you all with that. I think we will now do some Q&A. So I will pass the mic back over to Tierra. Tierra, do we have any questions?
Thank you, Casey. That was a great presentation. Yes, we have a few questions that came in while you were presenting. First one that I want to share is from Lars, and he asked, are teachers able to create classes and roster all students from their schools or just students they have in class? Reworded the question, better way to ask it, are there admin controls that limit which students teachers can add to the classes they create, or can they roster any student from their school?
Great question. It is any student within the school. Now, if you were a school within a larger district in Dyknow, you could potentially be assigned to multiple schools. But yes, there is currently no limit beyond the school level for teachers to be able to assign those students to his or her roster.
Awesome. Next question is an anonymous question, and it is asking, as an admin, how do you share a blocking plan to all teachers in your secondary schools, as well as default blocking plans from Dyknow?
Great question. So if you are an administrator user in Dyknow, you have the ability to create school-wide blocking plans. These are ones that are going to be made available to any teacher within your Dyknow account. So they actually appear in that plan list during a monitoring session, or if you're trying to assign one as default, it would appear in that list as well. School-wide blocking plans appear as suggested blocking plans in that list of those blocking plans that would be made available to a teacher to enforce during a session or to assign as default for automatic enforcing during a session. That's a really great question. That's currently our main way to share blocking plans in general. Anyone with a teacher or tech coach role doesn't have the ability to share blocking plans currently. So any administrator can do so via school-wide blocking plans. Good question. What others?
That is a good question. One clarification that came in while you were speaking is school-wide is the same as district-wide. Is that correct, or is that, yeah, that's
You
correct?
are absolutely correct. Yes, that is correct. And that's mostly because, you might not be within a district, so we didn't want to call them district-wide blocking plans.
Perfect. Last question is, I am a special education teacher with a para teacher. It appears that my para and I cannot monitor different classes. If she is monitoring English 8 while I am in English 7, I have to end monitoring to English 8 before I can see my students in English 7. Is there a way for both of us to monitor?
Yes. So each teacher can only monitor one class at a time. So if those teachers want to monitor the same class at the same time, they can. But I believe what this teacher is describing is the correct workflow, if I heard it correctly. If she wanted to join that co-taught class, she would have to end monitoring for whatever current class she was monitoring at that time in order to join the already in session co-taught class. Does that make sense?
That makes sense to me.
Okay.
Whoever submitted that, if that doesn't make sense to you, put it in the Q&A and we'll expand on it a little bit more if you need. One more question came in while you were speaking from Susan. When you set a blocking plan to end with a timer, it immediately reverts back to monitor. You have to physically click end monitor. Is there a way to end monitoring?
Another great question. I really appreciate you asking that. The answer is no, not currently. We don't have a way to automate the end of a monitoring session. But again, I do appreciate you asking, because every time someone asks a question like that, we track it and note it as a feedback, as an enhancement suggestion, right? So the more you ask for features, the more we know that you want them. And those are the exact things that influence our product development roadmap. So while my answer is no, it's still thank you and maybe in the future.
Perfect. One more question that came in from Lars again. Any update coming to the take a student feature so teachers don't have to click several buttons to get all the students monitored?
Great question. What he's referencing, yes, the take and monitor feature, which is, I call it stealing students, right? You're taking them from another monitoring session. Currently, you have to select each individual student name. If there are multiples, there is not a select all option. I appreciate that question. We do not have that on a roadmap currently. Again, it's one that we can note as an enhancement suggestion and track it with the others. And should any updates become available, we'll certainly let you know.
Awesome. I think that's all. We're a few minutes over, so I want to give everyone their time back real quickly before we let you all go. For those of you who are existing Dyknow users and those of you who were really engaged today, we would love for you to sign up to join our user community. This community is hosted through Facebook, and it is a great community where you can provide direct product feedback to us and our product team, as well as engage with other Dyknow users about using the product and just best practices, and really grow your PLN from there. It's a very engaging content schedule. We're going to have some great speakers who are current Dyknow users, as well as people from the Dyknow team. So really encourage anyone to join that community if you're interested. I dropped the link in the chat to our form where you can just fill that out. We'll send you an invite to the Facebook community, and then you can join from there. Everyone who attended today will receive the recording this afternoon, as well as those who weren't able to attend and registered ahead of time. You will also receive the recording today. If you need a certificate of attendance for PD for this session, please just respond to that email with the recording, and I'm happy to share that with you for your records and to submit to your team. And thank you all for joining us today. Thank you so much, Casey, for a great presentation. And we will see you all at next month's Lunch and Learn, which is TBD on the topic, but we will let you all know when we have it figured out.
Thank you.
Bye.